Welcome to the Artist Check-In. I'm your host, Nick Zano. My day job is talking to artists for different publications, which means I know a lot of people whose livelihoods have been impacted by the quarantine associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. In this limited series, I'll be talking with comedians, musicians, sound engineers, authors, and creative people about how they are handling this personally and professionally. This week, it's Don White, musician, storyteller, and author. Don is a friend of mine and always a good conversation. Full disclosure, I work with Don on his PR, so I saw how gigs began to disappear in March when venues started to shutter. But as you will learn in this interview, Don adapted quickly to start doing Zoom shows, which may be something he continues to do once the pandemic has passed. Here's Don. One of the things about this is that everybody I talk to seems to do at least two things. Everybody has diversified in some way. So you are a singer-songwriter and a storyteller. And what else would you add to that list?
I don't know. Let me try to get motivated for this.
All right, you wanna reset and start again?
What would I add to the list? I'm an author. I have at different points in my life been a sort of mediocre comedian. You know, I've diversified myself to the point of anonymity.
Well, you do have quite a fan base around the country, and you did have a fairly full schedule. You had dates for the spring and the summer and into fall. How has this impacted you? What have you lost because of the pandemic?
Well, lots of money would be the primary thing I lost. Some of originally they all rescheduled, not all of them, but most of them, it was just money deferred. The April dates and March dates rescheduled to September and October, November, but nobody's sure whether that we'll be able to do those
Yeah,
now.
that's the thing. A lot of people are sort of it might not have been would be a pain in the ass to reschedule, but you could still reschedule. Now nobody sort of knows where things are going to be if they start up in the fall again.
I know we're rescheduling as if the world will be back to normal, but I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. So, as far as I'm concerned, the fact that I do have a pretty good fan base and that they're pretty, dedicated group. There's not millions of them, but they are hardy. I've been reaching out to them and doing shows for them privately through this medium, through Zoom.
Mhm.
I've been really working on that, trying to, first took me a while to make sure that the sound would be good on it, and we figured that out. And then, having the technology the right way so that you can, like, I think for comedians or for people who use humor in what they do, it's nice to hear people laughing. And
Mhm.
so Zoom is something that allows that, but that requires quite a bit of, like, I actually have to hire somebody and bring them with me so that they can manage the event while I'm doing it. That's what I've
Mhm.
sort of come to. That I hire somebody and they mute the audience when that's necessary. They unmute, people that are selectively so that I can hear them laugh and I can see them. And if there's an emergency, if a dog starts barking or whatever, or
Uh,
a fire engine goes by, then we sort of mute everybody. There's a sort of somebody on hand to sort of manage it. But within that, which isn't that it sounds harder than it is. It's really a pretty easy job once you know how to do it. But for me, it makes it good because I feel like I'm performing because I can, even if there's 80 people at the Zoom concert and I can hear 15 of them, then my brain doesn't, it just sort of clicks into performer mode when I hear the laughter, so that I don't feel like I'm just performing for a screen. And it
Mhm.
winds up being better for the people on the receiving end, and for me too. I don't feel isolated. I can hear them and see them. So I've been doing that, and a bunch of other things. Working on trying to do some more teaching online. And this is the way the world is going to be for a while. So you may as well get good at it. It's kind of an adapt or die time, I
Mhm.
think.
Well, you pivoted to Zoom fairly quickly. Uh, was that daunting to you technologically? Is it something that you'd had any familiarity with before?
Nope, I had never been on it, and it was a little daunting, as anything would be, and especially not to get too, just to sort of say it simply, Zoom is built for talking, so there's a bunch of suppression built into it, um, to take outside sounds besides the human voice and suppress them. Unfortunately, with those left on, it
Mhm.
hears the guitar the way it would hear, a fan kicking on in a meeting room or an air conditioner, so it tries to suppress it, and that gives you the underwater, it makes it sound like you're performing from the bottom of your swimming pool.
Mhm. I do have
Um,
some friends who are trying to suppress acoustic guitars in this uh, in this pandemic era. It's starting to become noticeable online. Like, how many of my friends play guitar anyway?
I guess I'm for suppressing acoustic guitars in a general sort of sense anyway. Um, Actually, you have to take the suppression off. But once you learn it, it's not, nobody really knew how to do it 2 months ago, or it was hard to find the information. But through a little research and poking around, now the information is available. It's not hard. You can run an open mic now by showing people, okay, go before you play your guitar at the open mic online, go into Zoom and click this off and click this off. There's two or three things, and then it's still an inferior. It's not built for sound, not built for
Mhm.
sound quality, but it's manageable. Then and it doesn't. You can get away with it, and nobody seems to mind. And then the upside of it for me is that it's interactive. It doesn't feel like you're just rehearsing in a room looking at a screen.
Mhm.
So I prefer it. I'm going to do the other things too. I have a Facebook Live thing in May coming up where I'll just kind of throw it out to the whole world. But I like the private things. And what we do is everybody, so I perform for 45 minutes or an hour, and then I extend the meeting for an hour, and we all just chat. All the either who's ever there, they can all talk to each other, and I'll just sort of interject what I want. Or if it's really just my fans, then they can, it can be more centered around me, whatever they want. But that's part of the appeal of it, is that it's a reason to gather a group of friends together, and then for a concert, and then after the concert, everybody can catch up face to face. So that seems to be a way that I can make some money. I've been doing, one a week, probably two a week. I think is pretty reasonable to assume going forward.
Mhm.
So that's that.
Well, with your shows, there is a more so than maybe many other musicians. There's a communal feel, and there are sort of emotional highs and lows that you will take an audience through. So if you didn't have a means of feedback, yeah, I think it would have been especially tough for you to use this sort of technology if everybody was just sort of mute and listening somewhere and you couldn't hear how they were reacting.
Well, yeah, I mean I agree with that. And I would think that for a comedian it would be that way. You see now, like, well, Bill Maher's doing his show from his house, and he's doing, comedy pieces and new rules and all that, and it's weird sounding when he tells a joke, and if there was an audience, they'd be laughing, and he's pausing as if they were laughing, but they're not. It kind of takes you out of your game a little. I mean, you can learn how to do it, but it's, as live performers who use humor, man, you come to realize how much you depend on that, how much it feeds you as an entertainer. Like you hear it, it makes you want to do the next line better. It's all connected. So I like the format, and I would suggest anybody doing stand up or anything like that, trying to do it in this format, figure out how to do it in a way that they could at least hear some of the audience. There are
Yeah.
some tech challenges with it. You can't, if you have 80 people, it's hard to have them all on because any noise that comes from any of them goes to all of them. So you do have to have what they call a mute Nazi on board.
Right. Well, because people they're sitting at home, they don't realize that what they're doing necessarily could affect the performance. So that's a new challenge that comes along
Yeah,
with this as well.
there's a bunch of tech to it. You can't have your microphone on your device up loud. That's a problem. You can't have two devices in the same room. Then there's other just sort of common sense thing. Don't have the TV on. Don't have the
Right.
dog barking. So as a rule, in a smaller group, it's no problem. But we're trying to get so that we can get up to 100 and then start raising money for some of these venues that have been so good to me through the years, and are struggling so much. I want to be able to do concerts up to 100 people for them, and raise money for them, and that requires more. Like you have to sometimes just mute everybody,
Hmm.
and then unmute them when they applaud, and it requires a second person, and I'm training 2 people now to do it. So.
Well, you just did a spot with Cafe Lena, where you watched what was it? You were live in the chat room and watching a of your own performance.
Yeah, another surreal moment in this world here where you get to live chat about your own event that happened 4 months ago. Actually, it was quite smart and quite good, and I didn't ever thought of it. So Cafe Lena is a legendary venue out in Saratoga Springs. It's the longest running folk venue I think in the country since the 60s, 60 or 61 they started, and they're struggling like everybody. But they had filmed concerts there in the last year or two. Anybody who played there was filmed and recorded, and so they're showing those films and inviting people to see them like a regular movie. It starts at a certain time, and you all
Hmm.
come in, and there's a live chat. So that's not on Zoom. It's not It's only interactive insofar as you can chat with people. But it turns out to be pretty good. People want to support the artists and they want to support the venues, so they tip. And there's pretty good money in it if you can get enough people to it. People are very generous. So now I'm thinking I have a few um, uh, big production DVDs that I've made over the years, and I'm pitching the idea to the venues where they were filmed to do the same thing. And there's some tech involved in it and some things to learn, but that's a possibility for me to to do another viewing, especially of an event that was recorded in a venue. So you'll
Hmm.
be supporting the venue. People who came to the event might want to see it again, and whatever. Everybody's just home and they're pretty sick of Netflix now. So you can squeeze your DVDs into there. 2 months ago, this wouldn't have been a possibility, but in just times of desperation, Nick Zano, your own DVD might find a place in this world.
Yes, because people have actually found the end of Netflix, which didn't seem possible at one point, or at least they've watched Tiger King and thought, maybe I'll watch something else for for a while. Maybe I need maybe I need a break from this.
Well, there's a bunch of, to look on the upside, which is a little hard, but if you can just sort of go down the road, a couple of things that I'm thinking about are that um, everybody's going to know how to do this in 6 months. There's going to
Mhm.
be nobody on earth that is going to be afraid of a Zoom meeting or Facebook Live or YouTube Live thing, because we're all just being forced to learn about it. And so when we go back to normal, I will be older. I'm already old, and I will be older then. And so I'm thinking that it can help being good at this and the rest of the world not being afraid to use it, being accustomed to it, presents opportunities for me to travel less. Maybe I don't have to go to that on that tour where I know I'm not going to make any real money and I'm just doing it just to stay alive. Maybe I could cancel that and do some things for my friends in California and in Europe that you know what I mean? They'll be more, it'll be more familiar to everybody, and it might, you know, put help me to be on a few less airplanes back when the world, whenever the world gets back to normal.
Well, I was wondering if, first of all, you have that where you can reach places where you can't travel to, where it's prohibitive from a cost sort of standpoint at this point. But I was wondering if this might get you into places and then make it possible for you to travel to those places by cultivating an audience there that you could, where you wouldn't have had a presence before.
I don't know. I don't know that people had always said that about radio, and it's not often that that's the case. I have had one example in my life where I got commercial radio airplay and was able to build an audience, but all the other radio that I've gotten in my life, which would be on community radio and public radio, smaller stations, not big commercial stations. None of that has ever turned out to be to generate enough audience for me to to make it worth it to fly out there. So I'm
Mhm.
skeptical of that, but I don't know. I really don't know. You
Well, the
know,
reason I think this might work better is because you have a somewhat personal interaction here rather than somebody, because I think for radio, it's nice to get the radio play, but it has to be fairly constant to make a dent. But here you can talk to somebody virtually face to face, I guess, in that hangout after the show, and maybe make a real fan out of them.
well, I hope so. I certainly am always trying to do that, and that's why I like the Zoom format better than the other ones because I can. I just had a meeting with this young man. He's out of work in Michigan, and I knew he needed work, and he's kind of a tech savvy kid. So he's been learning on his own, and I've been doing these meetings with him online where I'm telling him what I want when I do a show. And I'm saying, okay, let's say at the end of it, everybody grabs a guitar at this party I just played at, and we're gonna have like an open mic. We can't sit around and jam because of there's a delay. You can't
Yeah.
sing with each other, but everybody could play a song, and we can host that and manage it. And so there's these things like mute everybody, unmute them when everybody applause, mute everyone again, unmute the host, spotlight them so everybody sees them, then mute them, unmute the next person that's going to play, spotlight them. There's this formula that we're developing where you can orchestrate almost anything, and so I really like Zoom for that.
Mhm.
Because of what you said, it's interactive. I can connect. I could stop in the middle of a song and see somebody on the board, unmute them, and say, "Hey, Bob, I haven't seen you for a while. Is there a song you'd like to hear?"
Mhm.
And then I can keep. I could ask, say, raise your hand if you're in a quiet space there. There's not going to be no phone ringing, no kids crying, no dog. If you feel pretty safe there, and I can leave them unmuted, leave 10
Mhm.
of 100 people unmuted so that I can hear them and interact, and then selectively interact during the show when I want to. So, it's the best you can do in these circumstances, and hopefully you're right that it will allow to create a connection and the possibility of creating a fan better than them just hearing you on the radio.
Well, and in Zoom in particular, I don't know if any other applications have this. You do have kind of a front row like you would in a live setting because you've got those row of squares where people are, where you can see a certain amount of people.
Right. Well, you can open that up too if you want to. Like the host, the person doing the tech for me, he will put it in gallery mode so he can get like 20 squares on his screen. I, like to see myself so that I can perform, realize when I'm not paying attention, realize, when my eyes have been closed for too long. I can't, it's kind of like doing it in a mirror. So I like that, but there like be 6 or 7 squares at the top. But for other people, for if I wanted to, I could fill the whole screen with those with the guests.
Right. Well, yeah, like I would imagine it would keep you on your toes too, because you're also at home performing. So you can you're looking at the things you look at every day instead of standing on a stage somewhere.
I know, it takes a little bit of doing, but every time I've done it, it just keeps getting better and better. I keep learning about it and feeling more like I'm really performing. And for me, because there's humor in a lot of the stuff, I really like hearing the laughter. Even just if it's two people laughing, it clicks the same part of my brain that it would if I was in a room with 100 people. So, we're gonna play it out and see how it goes. Hopefully people will keep responding to it, and I'll keep getting better at it, and I'll be able to make some money and raise money for some things that I'm in, that I'm worried about, venues and
Hmm.
stuff.
Do you think that the potential for money in this is anywhere close to live performing on a stage or in venues?
That's a good question. I'm at the beginning of it, so it's hard to talk about potential, but I,
Hmm.
I think possibly. Let's say that you were somebody who was already hugely famous and you didn't have to, work so hard to get 200 people to check into you. If you were Bob Dylan or Beyonce, then I think there's quite a bit of potential money because you could do it. There's just the numbers are just so much bigger. Zoom doesn't accommodate that.
Hmm.
Over 100, it gets pretty unwieldy. And there's things you can do. But just to throw it out on Facebook Live or YouTube or all these other formats, if you don't need to interact, which I'm sure some of these big artists prefer that, right? Why do I have to have that? I'm at home. Why do I want someone yelling at me from the first row or whatever?
Right, right. That Roger Waters had it right all along with the wall tour. How much easier would it be to knock a bunch of blocks off in front of your webcam and instead of having to build all of that whole set on
Right.
stage? Well,
You know, the, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I'll jump in after.
I was just going to say that, I had in the last few years a really busy schedule and getting paid pretty well, and but I knew that I would make more money in my hand on the shows that I played locally that might have paid me half the amount of money that a show I would fly to
Hmm.
would pay, because I had no expenses. I could drive to it in my Prius, which it doesn't. It runs on love, really. It doesn't. It just blows rainbows out the back, and I just tell it I love it, and the gas tank fills up.
Well, that might be more expensive in Lynn than just gas.
But so there's no real expense, but so maybe to make 2 or 3 times the money on the surface, but having to fly and stay in a hotel and rent a car and buy meals and all that stuff. So I've already always realized that the more you can do locally, the more money you actually get to keep, even though on the on
Hmm.
the surface it would look like less money. The guarantee would be less, and then I feel that way about this too, that I'm not spending any money. Like, what do they say online now that my car is getting a month to a gallon? Like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not spending any money, so a smaller amount of money is actually more money to me.
Hmm.
It's not it's so it all remains to be seen. I really don't know how
Well,
it's going to play out, but I'm determined to be good at it and to figure out different ways to make it available to people who want it.
well, I wonder when we're going to get the the Zoom equivalent of the first road song about life on the road when it's mostly, life going down in the basement, like the turn the page from Bob Seger would just be click the
Yes.
tab.
No, I think I'll skip that. You know, I always told people that if you see me writing songs about the windshield wipers, clacking on the front of my window as I drive through Wyoming, just kill me.
That'll be harder to do now because you're not in the same room. So that's a
You're gonna
plus
have
as
to
well. But
you
the
have
the
to work
competi-
for, work for it. Yeah, go ahead.
the competition is a little weird now because now your Zoom show might be, or your Facebook live show, or your YouTube show, you're you're competing with bigger names and all the local folks. But it's also, if you're watching the late night shows, like you said about Bill Maher, there's this sort of, all the shows kind of, there's a leveling of the playing field, technologically, because Colbert and Bill Maher and John Oliver and Diesel and Mero and all of these look like the locally produced shows now because you're everybody's using their iPhone.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but that's an excellent point, Nick. The playing field is level, but it's saturated too.
Yeah.
So let's see. What do I think about that? I think a few things. I waited a month before I put my face online. The reason I did that was I watched. My feeling is that performance skills are essential to building a fan base. You have to be a good performer to have people choose you over other choices that they have. And I feel like a lot of what I'm seeing online, people don't really feel that way. They feel because they're doing it in their room in front of their computer that it's not a performance. So I made a list of all the things I didn't like about what I saw people doing, sort of learning on the fly, pressing buttons while they were performing, talking to one person when they're performing to 100. Hi, Bob. Oh, I see that you just wrote in and said you wanted to hear this song. Sure. And while your audience, is sort of still there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought, let me figure out how not to do that, how to make the sound better and to perform. So, um, as far as competition goes, I think if you're not saturated out there, it doesn't matter. People will check in to see you if they're fans of yours. You
Mm-hmm.
know, hopefully they'll come in and see you because they know that they can't just you won't just be on their feed tomorrow or every Wednesday and Thursday, until
Mm-hmm.
till the end.
Well, as somebody who teaches performance as well, you mentioned that earlier that you've been doing some of that online. I'd imagine you did move fairly quickly towards Zoom, but I'd imagine, were you hesitant to do that as uh, this being a format you didn't have a lot of experience doing? Was that part of your decision? You wanted to lay back and watch and learn first?
Well, I have taught, Skype and FaceTime and all that works perfectly fine for a one-on-one session with
Hmm.
a student. So I have lots of experience with that. The Zoom is better for groups, of course, But yeah, I wanted to be good at it. I don't want, if people are going to pay you or tip you or whatever, it doesn't feel right to have them watching you learn how to do it while they're paying you.
Hmm.
Like I mean, and there's going to be some of that no matter what. But I just want to minimize that. So now at this so I have a sober festival that that I've been performing at for I don't know 30 years, and they're really hurting. All their fundraising dried up. So we're gonna do a show fundraiser for them,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna bring the young man to help me so I don't have to think about anything except perform. So everybody will gather and I'll just perform the best I can and try to get as good at it as I can and have it be a real performance and not have to, the same way as if I was in a venue, I wouldn't be thinking about what the soundboard was doing. I'd
Right.
just be performing. And so I'm trying to present that. I just feel it's respectful, for people that you're trying to raise money from, that you're trying to get to throw money in a tip jar or to pay you. I just feel like you should be as good as you can when you start to do that.
Hmm. And when is that show? The Sober Festival show?
We're gonna have a test run of it in the next week, and then we'll decide on the date. So they just got set on their end, and I'm doing something May 12th, which is going to be a Facebook Live show, and that's going to be through a folk organization out in New Jersey. So there's a lot of opportunities coming, and each one of them has like technology that I have to figure out first. So between now and May 12th, I want to get my Facebook Live thing as good as it can be, the sound wise and the camera. So I'll do a few test runs, and I want to stand up for that one. So I'm trying to get my camera so so I can perform, not sitting down, you know.
Yeah, the lighting, that's another thing that I found because I'm been doing some Facebook Live, and I'll be doing a show for a nursing home actually later this afternoon. I got to figure out the lighting is the thing that's been vexing me the most. So I don't, I will be playing from a basement, but I don't want to look like I'm, it's some grainy Hannibal Lecter lair that I'm coming to them from. I don't think that would be uplifting at all. You know?
Right.
So,
We worked on it. I have three lights around me, and we tried different things. I try to not face the camera at the window. Of course, in your lair, you won't have to worry about that.
right.
But yeah, it all matters. And my wife decorated behind me, so it doesn't look like my messy um, office anymore. It looks like it looks nicer. What it's just I honestly I wish I didn't have to do any of this. I would have said no to any of this, knowing that I could just go out every weekend and find a fresh audience and shake their hands. Remember handshaking, and give people a hug and all that, and talk to them and let them cough around me.
That was,
Do you remember
this,
the good old days when it was okay for someone to cough around you, Nick? Oh, I love those days.
the things you wish for, you don't know.
I just wish I was in a room where people could sneeze and it would be all right.
Yes. You don't know what you've got until it's gone. So,
Right.
so how can people help if people are fans of yours, or if they find you through this and want to listen? What's the best way to help you out?
Well, the worst way is to stream the music because, it was one thing when I could perform every weekend and be earning money from three or four shows, then the fact that my music was free, was something I could overcome by performing. But now that
Yeah.
that does virtually nothing for me at my level. I think it's 1/6 of a penny for a stream. It's nothing. So if you wanted to help, you could buy music. That would be great. DonWhite.net is the way to do that. You can buy physical product, or you could download the albums. It's $1 a song or something, and
Hmm.
that's a way that you could do something if you didn't have a lot of money to spend. If you go to DonWhite.net, also there are some, information about how to hire me yourself, how to do birthday party or whatever gathering that you want, or fundraiser, teach, all that stuff's there. And my schedule's pretty open. Give me a ring. We'll negotiate something.
Hey, well, thanks for doing this. Thanks for taking the time for the interview. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you too, Nick. All the best to you. Stay safe, buddy.